July 28, 1980. Late afternoon, New Hyde Park, Long Island. A parking lot behind a diner 2 blocks from a furniture store on the main road. A man walks out of Castro Convertibles, 51 years old. Service department manager. He has worked here for years. Same shift, same routine. He crosses the lot toward his station wagon, keys already in his hand. The sun is still up. The lot is mostly empty. He does not see the dark Ford Econoline van parked 30 feet away. He does not see the 8 men inside it and around it. He does not know that his name has been on a list for 4 months. He reaches his car, and then he sees them. He turns to run. 2 shots, a .22 caliber pistol, fitted with a silencer. The rounds hit him, and he drops. He's on the ground, gasping. According to journalist Jerry Capisci, who reconstructed the scene from present and former law enforcement sources, the man manages a few broken words. No, please, my wife. A second man steps forward with a 2x4 and brings it down across his skull. They pick him up and throw him into the van. A third man climbs into the station wagon and drives it away in the opposite direction. Witnesses in the diner parking lot stand frozen. Nobody moves, nobody calls out. The van pulls into traffic and disappears. The man's name is John Favara. Neither he nor his car are ever seen again. His body has never been recovered. No one has ever been charged. The man who ordered this was not his enemy, not his rival, not his competitor. John Favara's only crime was driving home from work on a Tuesday afternoon 4 months earlier and not seeing a 12-year-old boy on a minibike until it was too late. This was not a mob hit in any traditional sense. No debts, no betrayal, no broken oath, no business dispute. This was a father's grief turned into a death sentence carried out by the most dangerous crew in the Gambino crime family on behalf of a man who would become the most famous mob boss in American history. The father was John Gotti. In 1980, he was a captain at Capo Regime, running the Bergin crew out of a storefront social club in Ozone Park, Queens. His official job was listed as a salesman for Arc Plumbing and Heating Corporation, a no-show position arranged as a parole condition. When the company president was later asked what Gotti did, he said Gotti's job was to point out locations. His real income came from loan sharking, gambling, hijacking, and the earnings of his crew. 5 years after his son's death, Gotti would orchestrate the assassination of Gambino boss Paul Castellano on the sidewalk outside Sparks Steakhouse and seize control of the entire family. But on the day Frank died, he was just a father standing in a hospital hallway, afraid for the first time in his life. And what happened next to Favara, to his family, to the neighborhood, was something that everyone in Howard Beach understood and nobody could prove. Howard Beach, Queens, in the late 1970s was a tight, insular neighborhood on the western edge of Jamaica Bay. Working-class Italian-American families, modest 2-story homes, driveways barely wide enough for 1 car. Everybody knew everybody, and everybody on 85th Street and 86th Street knew that the man living at 16011 85th Street was John Gotti. John Favara lived directly behind him on 86th Street. They were back fence neighbors. 2 houses, 2 families, 2 entirely different worlds, separated by a chain link fence and about 40 feet of backyard. Favara was born on March 4th, 1929 in Queens. He never left. He married a woman named Janet. They adopted 2 children, including a son named Scott. He managed the service department at Castro Convertibles, a furniture store and factory in New Hyde Park, Long Island, a 13-mile commute each way, 5 days a week for years. He had a childhood friend named Anthony Zappi, whose father, Ettore Zappi, happened to be Gambino capo Shim and a distant cousin of family patriarch Carlo Gambino. But Favara himself was legitimate, a civilian, a man who went to work, came home, and kept to himself. His son Scott was close friends with John Gotti Jr. The boys were the same age, went to the same school, had sleepovers at each other's houses. Scott Favara slept in the home of a Gambino captain. John Gotti Jr. slept in the home of a furniture store manager. The two families existed on opposite sides of a fence and opposite sides of a world, and for years it did not matter. The Gotti household was loud and full. John and his wife Victoria, born Di Giorgio, had 5 children: Angela, Victoria, John Jr., Frank, and Peter. Frank was the 4th child. The middle son, born October 18, 1967. He was 12 years old in the spring of 1980. A neighborhood kid who rode bikes with his friends and borrowed things from other boys and was expected home for dinner by 5 o'clock. Gotti's crew, the men who answered to him, who earned for him, who would kill for him, operated out of the Bergin Hunt and Fish Club on 101st Avenue in Ozone Park. His inner circle included Angelo Ruggiero, his childhood friend and right hand, Gene Gotti, his brother, John Carneglia, who ran an auto salvage yard in East New York, Brooklyn, Charles Carneglia, John's brother, Willie Boy Johnson, who had been secretly feeding information to the FBI since 1966 under the code name Wahoo, Anthony Rampino, known as Tony Roach, Richard Gomes, and Iggy Alokna. Remember those names. Every one of them shows up again. March 18, 1980. It is a Tuesday late afternoon on 157th Avenue near 87th Street in Howard Beach. The sun is low. John Favara is driving west, heading home from work. He turns off Cross Bay Boulevard onto 157th Avenue, and the glare hits his windshield full force. On the south side of the street, a house is under renovation. A construction dumpster sits at the curb, partially blocking the road and cutting off the sideline for anyone approaching from the west. On the far side of that dumpster, 12-year-old Frank Gotti is on a borrowed motorized minibike, a small engine-powered bike belonging to a neighborhood boy named Kevin McMahon. The minibike looks small and unfamiliar. McMahon had not yet shown Frank how to handle the bike when Frank took off on it. Frank darts into the street from behind the dumpster. He darts without warning. Favara, blinded by the sun, does not see him. He is blinded and unable to react in time. The impact is immediate. Frank is thrown from the bike. He is rushed by ambulance to the hospital. John Gotti races there. His daughter Victoria later wrote in her 2009 memoir, "This family of mine," that her father told her he was afraid for the first time in his whole life. The doctors deliver the news. Frank Gotti is dead. He would have turned 13 that October. Police investigate. They rule it an accident. No charges are filed against Favara. The FBI, which routinely surveilled mob funerals, stayed away from Frank's services out of respect for the death of a child. And the neighborhood turned. 2 days after the accident, an unidentified woman called the 106th Precinct in Howard Beach and said the driver of the car that killed Frank Gotti will be eliminated. That same day, a written death threat appeared in Favara's mailbox. A detective visited the Favara home to warn him. According to multiple accounts, including Capecci and Mustang's mob star, Favara said that kind of stuff only happens in the movies. Over the next 4 months, the threats escalated on a documented, almost methodical schedule. There were more threatening phone calls from unidentified women. On April 13th, Favara's car, still bearing damage from the accident and still carrying the stains of Frank Gotti's blood, which infuriated Victoria every time she saw it parked outside, was stolen from in front of his house. It was recovered less than a mile away on May 1st. Then a funeral card from Frank Gotti's services appeared in Favara's mailbox. The next day, a photograph of the dead boy arrived. On May 22nd, the word murderer was spray painted across his car. On May 28th, Victoria Gotti attacked Favara with an aluminum baseball bat outside his home. According to Crime Library's account drawn from Capecci's reporting, Favara was treated at a local hospital. He declined to press charges. Everyone warned him. His childhood friend, Anthony Zappi, the son of the Gambino capo regime, told him to get rid of the car and leave Howard Beach immediately. A local priest advised him not to attend Frank's funeral. Neighbors begged him to go. Favara put his house up for sale. The closing was scheduled for approximately July 31st. Remember that date, July 31st. He never made it. Behind closed doors, Victoria Gotti's grief was consuming the household. Her daughter later wrote that Victoria attempted suicide 3 times, breaking mirrors, swallowing pills, and having to be sedated by Dr. John called to the house. According to intelligence from FBI informant William Batista, Gotti initially did not want revenge, but an alleged eyewitness told him Favara had been speeding and had run a stop sign. Victoria was inconsolable, so Gotti made her a promise. The machinery moved quietly. According to corporator testimony that surfaced years later, Sammy Gravano, then a rising Gambino soldier who would eventually become the family's underboss, organized the hit team as a personal favor to Gotti. The favor would not be forgotten. When Gotti took over the family in 1985, he remembered what Gravano had done for him. Peter Maas's 1997 book Underboss, based on Gravano's own corporation testimony, lists the Favara murder among Gravano's 19 admitted killings. The operation was built around a deliberately constructed alibi. On July 25, 1980, 3 days before the planned abduction, John and Victoria Gotti flew to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. They would not return until August 4, 1980. The timing was surgical. The grieving father would be 1,000 miles away when the work was done. 8 members of the Birkin crew were assigned. Capecci, drawing from present and former law enforcement sources in a 2001 Gangland column, later identified all of them. Angelo Ruggiero, Willie Boy Johnson, John Gotti, John Carneglia, Charles Carneglia, Anthony Rampino, Richard Gomes, and Iggy Alogna. Every one of them was a made man or a trusted associate. Every one of them had been at John Gotti's side for years. In the final days before July 28th, John Favara was still going to work. He was still living in the house on 86th Street. He was still 3 days from closing the sale that would have taken him out of Howard Beach for good. He had been warned by a Gambino captain's son, by a priest, by his neighbors, by the spray paint on his car, by the funeral card in his mailbox, and by the baseball bat that put him in the hospital. And he was still there. Here is where it gets complicated. The distance between Castro convertibles and the parking lot where they took him was 2 blocks. He walked it every day. On July 28th, the 8 men were already in position. They had the van, the silenced .22 caliber pistol, and a 2x4. They had been watching his schedule. They knew exactly when he would walk out. They knew exactly where he would be. July 28, 1980. Late afternoon. John Favara finishes his shift at Castro Convertibles and walks out into the Long Island heat. He walks 2 blocks to the diner parking lot where he has parked his station wagon. It is the same walk he has made hundreds of times. The same lot, the same car, but now he knows about the minibike and the setting sun. He knows about the funeral card in the mailbox and the photograph of the dead boy. He knows about the baseball bat and the word painted on his car. He knows his son used to sleep at the Gotti house, and that the family behind his fence is not a family you cross. He knows all of this. And he's still here, 2 blocks from safety, 3 days from closing. He reaches the car. He spots the men. He turns to run. John Carneglia fires twice with the silenced .22 caliber gun. Favara goes down. He's on the pavement, struggling to rise, gasping the same words that Capacci later reported. No! No, please, my wife. Richard Gomes swings the 2x4. It connects with the back of Favara's skull. Gomes picks him up, carries him to the van, and throws him inside. A third man takes the wheel of Favara's station wagon and drives it away. A diner owner watches the entire thing from inside his restaurant. He describes the scene to police. Days later, 3 men walk into his diner and sit in a booth. They do not order. They stare at him in silence for 15 minutes. Then they leave. The diner owner sells his business and moves away. He never speaks to investigators again. The van drives east toward Brooklyn, toward the Carneglia brothers' salvage yard in East New York. Both John Favara and his station wagon enter that yard on the night of July 28, 1980. Neither one comes out. Janet Favara reported her husband missing on July 29, 1980, when he did not come home from work. Detectives questioned John Gotti when he returned from Fort Lauderdale on August 4th. His response, documented in police records: "I'm not sorry the guy's missing. I wouldn't be sorry if the guy turned up dead." Victoria Gotti told investigators, "He never sent me a card. He never apologized. He never even got his car fixed." What happened to Favara's body has never been confirmed. At least 3 competing accounts exist, and none can be verified. Capacci's account in 2001, sourced to law enforcement, says the body was placed in a barrel filled with cement and dumped in the ocean off Brooklyn. Federal court papers filed during the 2009 trial of Charles Carneglia tell a different story. Cooperating witness Kevin McMahon, the same boy who had loaned Frank the minibike decades earlier, testified that Carneglia told him the body was dissolved in a barrel of acid at the salvage yard. Jeffrey Goldberg, writing in the New York Times in 1999, reported a claim that Favara had been dismembered with a chainsaw while still alive. No physical evidence, no barrel, no remains, no trace has ever been recovered to confirm any of those accounts. John Favara was declared legally dead in 1983. His wife Janet died in 2000 never learning what happened to her husband. Their son Scott, who grew up without a father and without a grave to visit, told the New York Daily News he was a great man, more than anyone would ever know. John Gotti Jr. acknowledged on 60 Minutes that his father was probably responsible for the disappearance. Charles Carneglia was convicted of racketeering conspiracy on March 17, 2009, and sentenced to life imprisonment by senior United States District Judge Jack B. Weinstein in the Eastern District of New York, with the Favara killing listed among uncharged crimes on his record. Willie Boy Johnson, one of the 8 men in that parking lot, was himself gunned down on August 29, 1988, shot multiple times outside his home in Flatlands, Brooklyn, after being exposed as an FBI informant. No one has ever been arrested or charged specifically for the disappearance of John Favara. In November of 2004, the FBI excavated a parking lot in a desolate strip of land between Brooklyn and Queens known as The Hole, a suspected mob burial ground. They found 2 bodies, neither was his. The house on 86th Street sold on schedule. The new owners never knew the name of the man who used to live there or why he left.